First in our program, we're honored to have Ms. Teresita Batayola, President and Chief Executive Officer of the International Community Health Services in Seattle, Washington. And she leads the state's largest Asian and Pacific Islander nonprofit organization, providing primary health care services, including medical, dental, behavioral, mental health, acupuncture, and health education services. Now, Ms. Teresita Batayola is part of the 23 members and part of the 3 Filipinas of President Biden's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native, Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders who were sworn into office today via online with Vice President Kamala Harris, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra. Now, this commission will oversee and complement the White House initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, first of all, congratulations on your appointment on the commission. We're very proud being Filipinos ourselves. Can you tell us more about your history and history in the Philippines and in the United States? We're interested to know.
Well, I grew up in the Philippines, so I went to Malate Catholic School. So I say hi to Batch 69 because they've been really a big part of my network. We immigrated to the United States in 1969, soon after I graduated from high school. And from then on, we struggled as a new immigrant family, but we made it through, and here I am.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so good. Can you give us a short history of AA, I'll call it AA to shorten it, and NHPI initiatives? How did we get here and how did we arrive at this point?
You know, in the United States, there are so many different types of people from Asian backgrounds or Asian heritage. And here we are all lumped together. You know, I'm Filipino, FilipinoAmerican, and we have Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, a lot of Southeast Asian and South Asian. And when we're in Asia, we're very distinct and separate from each other, celebrating each other's cultures. But here in the United States, we're all lumped together. And the United States has had a long history of exclusion and discriminatory laws against Asians. And back in the Clinton administration, there was a recognition that Asian Americans face distinct challenges in terms of discrimination, barriers to opportunity. So there were President Clinton back at that time started the White House initiative on, at that time, it was Asian Pacific Islanders. So now it's a much broader group of people. It's Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And President Biden has now picked up the baton again in recognition that Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders are facing a lot of extraordinary challenges in terms of anti-Asian hate, in terms of poverty, in terms of COVID-19's disproportionate impact on our populations, and knitting together all of those different issues so that we as commissioners can advise President Biden's administration as to how to approach all of these different challenges so that we could lift up Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders.
Mm-hmm. How timely and critical and relevant is the creation of this commission at a time of pandemic and a, may I say, sharply divided America?
It is very, very timely. You got it in terms of talking about a very sharply divided America. There is a lot of struggle in this country about what is science, about what we should do about the pandemic and its effects. In particular, many of us in the Asian American community have family-owned businesses, and so small business have really struggled and have gotten affected by the pandemic. Also, if you take a look at the workers, whether it's healthcare workers, we have a lot of Filipinos who are in healthcare, nurses, caregivers. A lot of them work in very labor-intensive industries. And so all of that has put our people in different front lines of the pandemic, and the frontline workers are the ones who are disproportionately affected in terms of being exposed to COVID-19 and having gotten sick from COVID-19. So it is so important and timely now that we have a special effort to try and address health equity issues and issues that of barriers, especially discrimination and economic opportunity, so that our communities can get lifted up.
You must be excited at this mission and at the same time daunted by the list of tasks ahead of you within the next 2 years. I was just reading the executive order signed by President Biden. And ahead of you, with the next 2 years, this commission shall serve 2 years from the date of executive order. Is that right? Yes.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so President Biden signed executive order on advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. On top of these, it's interesting to note that this is under the Department of Health and Human Services, no? Despite the multitude of missions, tasks of this commission initiatives, what is the significance of the commission being under the Department of Health and Human Services?
Well, the health status of our people is always fundamental, right? If you're not healthy, it's very hard to succeed. If you're not healthy, hard to get educated, hard to get a great job. And so that is fundamental. And I think it is so important, especially during a time of pandemic, that it be housed under Health and Human Services. So in my day-to-day job, I head up a community health center that serves low-income people. And in the case of International Community Health Services, we serve a lot of immigrants and refugees speaking about 70 different languages. And it is really critical during COVID that we know that people have access to great information. They have access to supplies like testing, to access to vaccinations, access to the ability to get treated without any kind of barrier, whether or not they can get treated without the hospitalization. So, health is really so fundamental to a lot of what is happening today in the United States. And I think it is really a smart decision of the president to say that Health and Human Services is an appropriate place for this commission at this time.
What barriers do you see or hindrances do you see? Do you foresee within the 4-year term of President Biden in implementing the interagency plan, which your commission will submit? Like, for example, are there specific state policies which will hinder efforts to advance the AA and NHPI initiatives? Like, for example, conservative judges. And if so, I'm asking in this light because will the commission consider some flexibilities in implementing your initiatives?
So you named it a little earlier when you said we have a divided country right now in the United States. So that is a very fundamental thing that we're going to have to address. There's an innate racism that happens with people's perceptions in terms of who we are and our abilities and to participate fully in the United States. But at the same time, there are things that we can do as a commission in terms of recommending policies that will lower the barriers or eliminate barriers. So one of the big things right now in this country is, what do we do about elections? I mean, that's been very controversial. And there might be an opportunity for us to weigh in, for instance, in terms of voting rights. That's just an example. Today we had a briefing on all the different issues that are facing Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and it ranges from economic opportunity all the way to climate change. So because we're only going to be in a 2-year term, we're going to have to make some quick decisions in terms of what do we want to do? What kind of priorities should we tackle in terms of addressing some of the systemic and institutional issues that we can address? And I think that's the main difference in terms of being a presidential appointee, that we can really work at the federal level to address issues that can potentially really lift up health equity and other equity issues for the entire country.
I've read and personally heard Filipinos experiencing anti-Asian hate crimes. In the EO creating the commission, one of the aims is to improve safety access to justice and violence prevention for AA and NHPI communities. And that includes by preventing, reporting, addressing, and better tracking acts of hate and bias. Through social media and the news that many Filipinos have been at the receiving end of an anti-Asian hate crimes, is there a better way of tracking and reporting and preventing in your experience?
Well, social media is helpful in terms of spreading the news, the information about these incidences. But nationally, there are efforts like the organization that's doing a lot of work in advancing justice has started basically a national repository of all of these to start documenting them. In this country, there are laws against hate crimes, but not all of these acts of aggression qualify as a hate crime. But still, they are discriminatory acts against our communities and our people. So the fact that there's now a concerted effort to build the data so that we have proof that this has happened, that it is not just one social media incident that got repeated again and again and again, but that there are multiple events and some of them don't even get into the news.
Can you tell us how AA and NHPI, how anti-Asian hate crimes have affected, how has anti-AA NHPI actions affected businesses over there? And can this interagency plan address these businesses and employment concerns?
It has affected many of the Asian businesses in terms of the volume of business having gone down, people feeling like a little bit intimidated because they have been targeted, these businesses have been targeted, so customers potentially stay away because they don't want to be in harm's way. And I can say that because our organization, International Community Health Services, has locations in different communities, and one of them is in the Chinatown International District of Seattle. There are still many businesses, many restaurants and stores with boards over their windows because they have been repeatedly broken into or vandalized, and a lot of intimidating acts perpetrated against the small business owners and their workers. And when there is an atmosphere like that, people are discouraged from coming. And, even though the community has done a lot to make it safer and make it more welcoming, there's still that perception that they could be, customers could be in danger if they come into the community. So that's a very real impact. Many of these businesses are small and they're family owned, and it's the only source of livelihood for them. And if they don't have the customers, of course, then it becomes a losing proposition.
How aware are Filipinos there about this issue? Are we part of the continuing discussion on AA and NHPI, or do you sense some reluctance on them on the part of the Filipino community? I haven't been there for a while. I lived in Honolulu and San Francisco for a while, but so you can maybe update me on the awareness and involvement of Filipinos there on this issue.
I think there is an effort to distance ourselves from what is going on, but there's also equally at the same time an effort to to be a part of the solution. The distancing part is that Filipinos, especially those who are first generation, get confused about being lumped in with the Chinese. Oh no, that's a
Yes.
Chinese problem. Well, it's not a Chinese problem. It's all of our problem.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, as a community, because it has affected, not just the Chinese, but anybody who has Asian heritage or Pacific Islander heritage, who looks, you're a person of color and you look like you're from somewhere else. Then there's more of an effort to band together as communities to work across the divide, if you will, and bridge across not just the different Asian groups, Pacific Islanders, Native Hawaiians, but also with those with Latino heritage and African American heritage. Remember that this country is going through what I would call, basically a seismic experience in terms of what happened with racism, in terms of Black Lives Matter and the anti-Asian hate and anti-immigrant targeted towards Latinos at this point in time. But all immigrants have been targeted at different points in time of the United States history. So right now we've got this thing that's happening that I referred to as seismic because it shook us to our core. Those of us who've been here around long enough,
Yes.
And in my case, experienced, and learned about the civil rights movement and what that was about in terms of making sure that, equality becomes a deep value in the United States, and having passed laws that prohibited discrimination, all that is being undone. And so now all of us who are at the end of the stick, if you will, who are targeted for these discriminatory acts, are now working together, banding together to be able to right what is happening now and place us back into a situation where there is more inclusion, there's more acceptance of everybody.
Are the Filipino-American community youth actively involved in this topic, and has it sparked discussion within their ranks?
I, really am proud to say that I do believe the Filipino-American youth are pretty aware. I can't speak for them, of course, because I'm a different generation, but I've seen their activism. I've seen how they are really trying to figure out how they can make an impact. And I've seen them, volunteering in the community, doing different things to help promote safety, to help promote education access, and just as importantly, to really understand this country and why it is so important to assert our rights to be here.
How do you see working with the other members of the AA and NHPI community in pursuing your interagency plan for the government?
We will be working in different committees. Tomorrow is the second day of our very first meeting sessions. And we'll be sorting out the committees that we'll have and what initiatives that we want to take on in our 2-year period. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Looking at my notes for a while. Okay, so I asked the barriers. How are the Filipinos? Okay. Is there any message? Do you have any message right now for for everyone watching you right now on our show?
I think that, you have a worldwide reach, and you reach our communities all throughout the globe. And, sometimes I wonder if the people in the Philippines really understand what kind of challenges those of us who have gone abroad, whether it's the United States, Europe, Middle East, or elsewhere, and the kind of experience that we have in how we have to prove ourselves over and over again, that we are worthy of respect, we are worthy of being able to access all opportunities that are available to us, and that we are fully capable as Filipinos to achieve whatever we can achieve given the opportunity. And bottom line, that is what the kind of work I've done, in my own job, but also what I look forward to in doing the commission, that the opportunities are there, that people are treated with respect, with equity, with honor, and that there are no barriers put on us just because of how we look, how we speak, or how we act.
Finally, I'd just like to ask one question. Coming from a health services background, recommend plans for your, quote, the executive order, improve health outcomes, eliminate health disparities, expand access. Do you have your recommendations for now, your last word for us?
In the United States,
Yes.
healthcare is very, very expensive.
Yes.
So expanding access to healthcare is always the most important thing. We are a country that has expanded coverage for more people, but there are still a lot of people who are left out, who have to really work hard to be able to gain healthcare. And, they can come to a community health center like my organization, but still too many people have the perception that they will not be able to get taken care of because they don't have the money, so they wait until they're very sick. And so access is very, very important.
I'm quite sure the different backgrounds, professions, and experiences combined in this committee will bring out the best plans to address equity within the AA and NHI community. Thank you very much for your time, and Commissioner, and maybe we can interview you again on your after your submission of your interagency plan to President Biden.
Sure. Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you so
opportunity.
much. Thank you very much. Commissioner Teresita Batayola, a commissioner. She was just sworn in to President Biden's Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll be back with more news right after this break.